Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, we're keeping our focus on the developments in South Africa concerning foreign nationals, Nigeria in this case, inclusive. Today, we're joined by Ambassador Jerry Ugokwe, who is a former Nigerian ambassador to Austria. He's also a former member of the House of Representatives. Good morning, Ambassador, and thank you for joining us today. Now, this attack
Thank you so very much. It's my pleasure.
Right. This has continued in South Africa because there are reports, even local press there, reporting that yesterday there were fresh protests by different groups, hotel dwellers hitting the streets saying foreigners must go. And then late into the night, we understand that there are some attacks that are also going on in some towns, looting going on with little police presence, and so some areas are also being touched. Well, this leaves Nigeria in, not sure to say if it's a fix, but there are those who thought maybe this week it might just, be on the low. But as it is, it looks as if today, or yesterday when it continued, it might just go the same way this week. What are your immediate thoughts at this moment?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Let me begin by reaching out, my hearts reach out to those who lost their loved ones and those who lost their property in South Africa. It is not easy to lose someone, it's not easy to lose what you have worked for all your life just because of this kind of a situation. I think I want to go approach this through the background of what are the key issues that propelled what we are seeing today. I would say that there are three. One is that when Nigeria was spending millions and billions of money to help South Africans to be liberated from apartheid, we did not negotiate anything. We did not put our foot down that in doing this, our businesses will thrive in South Africa. For example, if you look at the United States of America, wherever they go to do this kind of a thing, you find that they maintain a solid presence. We have nothing like that. Secondly, the white apartheid, regime kept drumming into the ears of the young ones in South Africa by saying that, look, you guys think you are going to, just because you want us not to be in charge, that when you become in charge, you will be in charge. The answer will be no. These Africans, these black Africans will come and take over from you. They will come and block the space for you. And this was the concept they grew up with. The third one was that the apartheid white South Africans handed over political power. They didn't hand over economic power. And remember that, way back in South Africa, their educational policy in those days was that the black Africans were being educated to get into the labor market, while the whites are being educated to take over leadership. So with all this in the whole mix, you find that our past leaders didn't negotiate anything for us. We just spent and spent and spent. And when they became free, the young ones began to think, oh, what these guys are saying is true. The best thing is for us to kick these guys out so that they don't take all our jobs. To me, these are a mix of what is actually going on in South Africa. It's unfortunate, that it's going that way. But you see, the issue of diplomacy is something that you must be followed very, very carefully. It is not enough, like some people are saying, go and attack South African businesses. That's not the solution. The solution first, the way it is done in proper diplomacy is part of the ways we have started. One, you recall your ambassador so that he can come and give you a breakdown of what has happened. Then you send an envoy, he will go there and have a proper discussion with your people, with the government, and then bring back information to you. And then based on that, then you take a proper decision. So for me, It's not a one-way traffic. It is not easy because you're talking about, a situation where we are saying, look, we are the leaders in the African continent, and things must be done in the right way. It's not enough for us to go and start attacking, as people have been proposing, go to MTN, go to this, without realizing or remembering that most of these businesses in Nigeria are all Nigerian money. Most of the MTN money were sourced from Nigerian banks. Most of the monies that were used in ShopRite were shopped in Nigerian banks, and that's, a problem if you say go and do tit for tat. And by the way, what is tit for tat? An eye for an eye. That doesn't mean you're going to run around and start killing South Africans. Hell no.
Well, Ambassador, if I could jump in, so so does that mean that people misunderstand or misinterpret it when they think that our foreign policy is reciprocity? It doesn't apply here, does it?
Well, when you mean reciprocity, we need to be careful about that. Reciprocity, for example, if somebody closes your mission if your mission in South Africa is closed, the way to respond is to close their mission here. Killing is a criminal act. It is, killing, all this idea of, painting it with names and all that. It doesn't matter whether the person is a foreigner. It doesn't matter whether it's a white or a black. If you kill somebody, you have committed a crime, and it should be treated as such. What we should be doing is to make sure, first of all, we get other other African countries, to lend their voice to this. That's number one. Number two is that we must hold South Africans responsible, because the idea of government is for protection of lives and property, whether they are citizens or residents or foreigners. The main purpose of government is to protect lives and property. So when they have not done that, it is a failure of government. And then we must look at it in this direction. We must hold South Africa, the South African government, responsible. They have police, they have army, they have courts to get these people who committed these heinous acts to book. So that's, for me, the way to proceed. And I believe that is one of the reasons why an envoy is usually sent there, to be able to aggregate all this and bring back to the government, so that the government will take an action in that direction.
So now that the envoy is back, we're expecting, at least he'll have to give his report to the president, who you then say will then take the next step. Turns, fresh violence broke out there. So those who are wondering, how does it usually work? So is it that whatever information that he had there, and there the chance, the potential of that being, is this still going to, how will the fresh violence or this fresh protest, what kind of impact will it have on the report that he's going to give to the president?
It's important that you remember that our mission in South Africa is not closed. So it does not mean that an envoy goes in and comes out, the information ceases to flow into the government. We have consulates, across South Africa. And with the kind of thing that is happening, as you said, there is, further attacks, or there were further attacks yesterday and at night and all that. Our embassies or high commissions, if you will, in South Africa will, be on alert. They should provide protection for Nigerians who are there. In fact, in some cases, the missions are kept open for those who want to take refuge, in the missions. So information has not ceased to come in. The idea of sending an envoy is to be able to discuss at the highest level and bring back to the president, so that an immediate action is taken, so to forestall further deterioration of our relationships.
Ambassador, do you think we have a clear understanding of what the real issues are? Some say this issue dates back more than 20 years. And even in recent times, 2008, 2015, and now, these outbreaks have been continuing. And then some also say that they're not even sure whether this is xenophobic or Afrophobic, given that there are other, country residents or nationals of other countries other than African countries in South Africa, and they seem to be doing quite well and safe. And you mentioned it the other time that political power has been given, but economic power is still in the hands of the former captors. So do you think, as a nation, Nigeria has a good understanding of the real issues that are invoking this violence against her nationals?
Well, I've tried to state, as far as I understand, these three issues. One is political power being given and economic power being retained. The second was indoctrination of the young people of South Africa. That yes, the white people are handing over to you, but, as soon as we finish handing over, your brothers, Africans, will come and take it over from you. And then, of course, with all that, as you know, this did not start this year. It didn't start yesterday. So it is this indoctrination that over time, as the economy is going worse, you find that these young people who have had impression that, after school they would be employed, they would have good jobs to feed their families and all that, the jobs are not there. So once that begins to happen, it begins to reverberate in their brains what they have been indoctrinated into. That is true. These guys have taken over our positions. These guys have taken over where actually we should be. And on that basis, the only way to get jobs or to get, to feed ourselves is to drive these guys out of here. Yes, I do believe that Nigeria clearly understands this. It's just that, again, in the past, past regimes, have, continued to treat this with kid gloves. And in many cases, we have not stood our ground to say, look, it's either we get this thing done the right way or we call your bluff. So again, this is a period where we have to revisit the idea of citizen diplomacy, where the life of every Nigerian matters. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what they claim the person has done, because I've heard people say that, some South Africans have told me that the people in question are criminals, they're drug dealers and stuff. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to this country. Now, if they are drug dealers or whatever you call them, take them to court and properly prosecute them and let them face the law. You cannot take laws into your hands. That's what we're saying. I think we understand it. I think it is well understood, but whether there have been clear opportunities where these points have been made clearly to South Africa, I cannot say that. I just pray that this is an opportunity, again, for us to stand our ground, to say, look, the right thing must be done. If it is not done, we're going to call your bluff. That's how it is done.
Yeah, let me quickly follow up on that. So do you think that that Nigeria has been strong enough in her stance on this matter? You heard the former Minister for Foreign Affairs the other time say that he would expect stronger stance of the federal government of Nigeria. So do you think so far Nigeria has been strong enough in her position now on this matter?
That's the point I'm trying to make. I said this will create that opportunity to be strong or stronger, if you will. We have treated South Africa as brothers. We have treated them as friends. But if it comes to a point where our people are going to be murdered in numbers, we must take a strong position. And I believe that this government haven't collated all the information, haven't been properly educated on these issues, will take a stronger stand. And of course, I expect, that some of us will continue to put pressure on government to do the right thing. Again, you must do it in a right manner, in a diplomatic manner. And again, it is important to make sure that whatever we are doing, that we also carry all the African countries along with us, because this is important. It's unfair and unreasonable that black brothers and sisters will be treating each other the way it is happening in South Africa. The entire African continent has to rise up. The entire African continent has to stand to be counted. I think it is important. This is Africa, and we're talking about, again, brothers and sisters. If we, other continents are looking for ways of collaborating and working with each other and expanding their frontiers, what we're doing is diminishing ours. I think that is wrong. And that's why I believe that whatever we're doing, we must do it in collaboration with other great African brothers and sisters.
Speaking of other African countries, SERAP is asking African countries, African Commission, to take South Africa to court. And the big story is that they're meant to seek $10 billion for the victims. What do you make of this, this suggestion?
Well, of course, there's an African Commission on Human Rights and all that. It's important that first it is discussed. It's not just about taking to court. Of course, you take to court and they last forever. The important thing is that, something has happened and it must be taken into consideration as quickly as possible. It is not just about waiting for when the courts are in session or taking it to court that will take, so long. What we are saying is this is a point where it is important to summon a quick and urgent meeting of the African Union. Let this issue be discussed, because what affects one African country affects others. What affects Nigeria affects other countries. Again, you can imagine if Nigerians begin to chase away people from other African countries to go home that we don't want them here. What kind of chaos that would be in the continent. So it's important. It's an urgent matter, and I do encourage the government to initiate an urgent meeting of the African Union so that this could be discussed and a proper solution, a solid solution, a solution that will be long-lasting, be preferred.
Okay, now, just so we can have an insight into what is perhaps ahead of us. So, from what you have seen play out so far, what do you think is the wider implication of these actions, this, back and forth between South Africa, Nigeria, and other African countries as it regards the xenophobic attacks? If this is not handled well, how will this play out for African unity, trade relations, and what have you? What do you think might happen?
Of course, that is exactly what we're worried about. If by any chance this is not properly taken care of, this is not properly handled, it's going to put Africa many years behind. Like I said, other continents, Europe, the Americas, they are doing whatever it takes to work together. And then we, as Africans, with all the shortcomings that we have, are trying to shortchange ourselves. It is not acceptable. And our leaders will stand up to be counted. Our leaders should stand their grounds and say, look, this is not accepted, this is not acceptable, and we must do the right thing. And the right thing is to bring back Africans together to ensure that this kind of a thing does not happen, that it does not repeat itself. Yes, I've told you how I believe this happened, but we need to begin to re-indoctrinate our youths that this is not the right way to go, that the right way to go is cooperation and working together. Because, Africa cannot afford this. We can just not afford this, not in this century, not in this time, not at this time. We cannot afford it. It is very condemnable, and it's important that we as African leaders take up the position to say, look, we will not let this happen. It is not just a question of reprisal attacks or retaliation. It should stop, point blank. It should stop,
well,
period.
Ambassador, some of the rhetoric coming through from South African officials, first, the High Commissioner in Nigeria did say that it's not xenophobia, that some of these cases are criminality is just gone awry. And then you hear the Minister of Foreign Affairs say, accusing Nigerians of drug dealing. We didn't see her cite any court case, to underscore her point. But then you also have some of these hotel dwellers who are asking the government to address them on how to deal, in their words, with foreigners who are there illegally. So this rhetoric coming through from them, doesn't it suggest, but there are those who think that they just want to score political points? And do you think that this is leaving Nigeria with no choice other than to call the bluff?
Again, like I said earlier, those rhetorics does not resonate with me. The issues are very clear. It's a criminal act, to kill somebody. One, if you say they are drug dealers, have you taken them to court? Have you arrested them? Have you taken them to court? Have they served their term? So trying to make a point by anybody whatsoever that because these guys are drug dealers or because they are illegal aliens or residents, it does not resonate with me. It is not, diplomatic. What should happen? If they are illegal aliens, arrest them and deport them. That's how it is done. You don't, round them up and kill them. That's number one. If they are drug dealers, you arrest them. What is the work of the police? What is the work of the drug agencies in those countries? Their job will be to arrest these people. It doesn't matter where they come from. If you
all right, just one more, Ambassador. Just let's put this in before we wrap up on this. Nigerians are eagerly just watching and waiting to see how the government will respond to this. Now, you say, ultimately, if it continues unabated, we may need to call their bluff. In calling their bluff, what will that mean?
Well, diplomatically, the way to begin would be, one, we have recalled our ambassador or our high commissioner. If it continues, then you can, ask them, their high commissioner, to leave your country. And then you continue negotiation. If that doesn't stop, you can shut down their embassy and then shut down your own embassy in that country and bring back everybody from there. Again, one of the things the government now has started doing is to repatriate Nigerians, who are willing to come back home. That's part of it. Nigerians who are ready to come back, who are prepared to come back and start a new life in Nigeria, give them the opportunity, make it a little bit easier for them, and then they come back and resettle in Nigeria. So for me, these are the diplomatic ways of going about it. It's a long process. It's not an overnight process. First, like I said, we will call your ambassador, you ask theirs to leave, and then you shut down their embassy and shut down your own mission there and bring everybody back home, which means there is no diplomatic relationship. At some point, if there are any discussions, that discussion is done in a neutral country until relationships get back to normal. And that's how diplomatically it gets done.
All right, Ambassador Jerry Ugokwe, former Nigeria's ambassador to Austria and also a former member of the House of Representatives. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us this morning.